Welcome to another episode of Untold Civil War. And today I'm with the best friend of the show and sponsor, Joseph Valicenti, the badge maker. And tonight's going to be an interesting topic because we're going to be talking about the handmade souvenirs from Appomattox. Let's go through that. What sort of artifacts do they have at Appomattox?
So, like most museums and national parks, they've got a huge amount of items in their collections that, sadly, a lot of the public may not even get to see. They cycle them out, and but there are some that are on display, and I have a personal tie to Appomattox Courthouse. I worked there as a intern when I was in college, and I was at a local school in that southern central Virginia area. And I'll plug Longwood University. You probably never heard of it if you're not from Virginia, but I love the experience there. I ended up working there after I graduated for about 6 months as a living history interpreter and park guide. So I learned a lot of what those types of places really hold in the wealth of great pieces. And in preparation for our talk, I thought I'd check there to see, and lo and behold, I had forgotten, but then relearned about all these great things there. So not only do they've got a bunch of great scrimshaw pieces, as we talked about. They have rings, of course, which we discussed were very popular for POWs to make. You could call it something, obviously personal. I mean, they'd probably carry that home from the war if they hopefully survived out of the prison camp. But the way it worked was you see a lot of like military insignia or dates on them. And actually, I wanted to show you something I have in my own collection. I'm going to hold it up. It's not from Appomattox. It just came to mind. So this is an actual POW ring made from bone, and you can tell that it has, it's very intricately carved. You can see the edges in the light there. That the band is not exactly flat. It's not round, and there's this red material that was put in there. I believe it to be wax. But here, look, you see shields, could be 23rd Corps possibly, but here's clearly Union shields that are, I'll try to spin it in view of my camera. You can tell that's got to be what it is. Now, not that unfortunately I know who made it or I know what prison it came from, but it's just part of my own collection. Now, that's a great example of what they have at Appomattox. They've got rings. I was able to luckily send you pieces, and those pieces have pictures of those pieces, forgive me. And you'll see that the rings have corps insignia. One of them has the Sixth Corps cross, called it the Greek style cross that's on it. It also has the maker's initials. So again, made very personally. There's another one that has the year carved into it. That one's made out of wood, but that we'll talk about later. But you see a lot of those different types of traits with those pieces. And really, they're just made from what they had left over as junk from the stew or food that they would be fed at these prisons. So you see them a lot out of, like I believe I said before, beef bones, particularly. Really any animal bones, I guess, that really are available depending on where the prison is located.
How did you find that wonderful piece?
Oh, I'm always on eBay. I'm always looking for somehow acquiring pieces that I could use for the business. And I acquired that one. I think I got it for like $15. Like the
Wow.
seller really didn't care for how much they got it for as long as they sold it, I guess. And I was lucky to get it. Sadly, it is not whole anymore since I got it. I decided to wear it to an event just for the thrill of wearing it because it actually fit my ring finger. And I guess in the slight friction of wearing a 150 plus year piece of jewelry made out of bone, got a crack in it, but not. It's really not noticeable. But still, it's still pretty much in 99% intact. So, but yeah, it was simply a lucky eBay purchase.
Well, it's a beautiful piece, but we talked about these pieces that are unique to the POWs, whether it be Libby Prison, Andersonville. What about some unique pieces to Appomattox? Because there's some unique souvenir type pieces, right?
Right. Now I'll stress that, a park or a museum, they don't always have things in their collections that are only unique to that location, that geographic location, the events that occurred there. So a few of the scrimshaw pieces they just acquire through donations or finding them through whatever means they have available. But Appomattox is very unique for our discussion because um, there are personal souvenirs made from a battle that took place there and not because soldiers were just sitting around with time to kill. Now, of course, that's what they did with the pieces that we're going to discuss that I want to talk to you about, but this is a unique situation. It's the event that arguably ends the war, and it in people, the soldiers recognized what was going on, how significant the events there basically were, as they unfolded.
Yeah, let's get into it. So, how did this whole thing start?
Okay, so you have, Lee on the run from Richmond and Petersburg. He makes it all the way to Appomattox, stopping at various towns along the way, trying to acquire food for his soldiers, but he's still losing men in droves as he gets there. He gets to Appomattox. He's able to kind of get a good plan on how to possibly still have the army last and survive to fight on, and his goal is to break south towards North Carolina to join up with Joseph E. Johnston and his army that's there, basically tailing Sherman. Idea is to combine the armies and then hit both of them, Grant, Sherman, and somehow succeed. Now, long shot, but still possible. But by the time he's at Appomattox, they try to break to the south, but Grant's men are able to stop him. They close the gate, basically, and he's surrounded. And because he's surrounded, Lee knows what has to happen, and he decides, yeah, it's time to surrender. So Grant, being the great, general that he was, arguably to some, of course, but in this event, he does his due diligence, and everything's handled very through etiquette, military etiquette, and he sends his staff member Ely Parker to go deliver a message to Lee to say, okay, let's talk. And they decide the spot where that message is delivered and then replied to was under an apple tree that was on property in the village of Appomattox Courthouse. Now, what happens after that is that Army rumor takes over, and as you might learn, back then Army rumor was like wildfire. So soon, all particularly on the Union side, soldiers found out like, wow, that's what happened there. Oh, is this it? Is this finally it? Is this that's the catalyst that's gonna possibly lead to this? Or eventually it did. Lee gets the message. He replies, okay, we'll meet at this time. And as most folks know, Grant and his staff and Lee and his aides meet at the McLean House in Appomattox, and they sign the surrender terms. And Grant's very generous with them. And everybody basically is happy as they can be with the situation. And that's it. Lee's army is surrendered. So really after that is when you start to we learned later that soldiers went after that apple tree and hacked it to pieces. There was
Right. So I know that at the actual house, they started taking chairs and pens, and I heard they even took, the little girl's doll, right? All sorts of items. But it wasn't just the house that was a victim, right? So they actually came up after the tree, which the surrender never took place underneath the tree, but
no.
still was a victim, huh?
Right. Well, that's actually part of why that's the Army rumor part was that there was, I think, some misinformation where that the surrender did take place under the tree. But the way the surrender went through is that of course the messages are delivered. They agree on the time to meet in the location. They meet in the McLean House. They sign the terms officially on paper, and then the ceremonies start with all the pardons, the slips being written for all the Confederate soldiers to be pardoned. Then the official surrendering of their arms, which General Chamberlain, Joshua Chamberlain, is the head of the Fifth Corps at the time. He leads that ceremony. And then after that, yeah, they're free to go once everyone gets their parole slips, which were basically literally their tickets home. But because of rumors saying, "Oh no, it happened under the apple tree," well, they go looking for the apple tree, and they definitely find it, and it's gone overnight, the entire tree. So what happens is those shards of wood from the tree are then made into personal souvenirs per soldier. And Appomattox Courthouse National Park was able to acquire these pieces through whatever means over the decades after, and they have them on display, some on display and some in their collections. And
So,
okay, so I guess we could talk about, I mean, not all of them are identified, but so we could talk about the unidentified ones first, I guess.
okay.
So there's the stack of books. Now these are different sized pieces, all made from the wood of the apple tree. They're different sized books. Now they're not titled books, they're just in the shape of bound books that would fit the period. And there's a mini one and there's larger ones. Why the soldier chose to make these pieces of wood into books, I have no idea. I don't know. The park didn't share with me any knowledge they had on it, but they are made from the apple tree. And now, what you're probably going to ask, why? How do they know that? They didn't. They labeled their files as to like how they acquired it and why and who they're related to. But yeah, forgive me, I don't have those up with me. But there's others that they have, because everything's cataloged for them. So
Right,
they have,
right.
who donated it and when and how it was connected to the park, because they wouldn't hold on to it otherwise. The next is a another ring, and it's got the date on it of well, no, it's got the unit number on it, 189th, and that belonged to a member of the Fifth Corps, because they call a Fifth Corps insignia on it as well. There, that one actually, I sent you a picture. It is on display, and it's actually under another handmade piece, which is a brass corps badge of the Fifth Corps insignia. So if anybody goes to Appomattox, they should be able to see that actually in the museum in the actual courthouse. Now, another piece that they have is a letter opener. I believe that one is actually made by an officer. So even officers didn't, think it too unruly or uncivilized to go get themselves a souvenir as well. But then the real like piece de resistance is the another Fifth Corps badge carved from the wood of the tree, and it was identified to belong to a particular soldier. And I sent you the picture of that soldier. And now, of course, this is the end of the war, and the Corps insignia are still used with the Army until the war's end. And then after that, they are only used with the veterans groups. But the park acquired not only a picture of it, of the soldier who made it, but also a letter that's featured in the picture. And if anyone can try to read and transcribe it, they can. And if they want to make inquiries to the park about any of these pieces, of course, too, they can't get a good response. But the soldier turned the badge into a stick pin and then even gave it away as a gift to a loved one afterward. So even though it was his and it was a great souvenir, um, that's that again great because he made it into a core badge, which of course I'm into. But he again made from that apple tree. Now, yes, like you said, other people, there's other examples of souvenirs left and right at Appomattox. These are the handmade ones that are just unique because I don't recall any other event in the war where soldiers made their own souvenirs from something that was on the battlefield. Now, yeah, soldiers could pick up anything they want, trophies, whatever. But and Appomattox, ironically, seems to be where everyone realized, yeah, these events are it. This is it. We were here. I'll even add, and I was going to talk to you about this piece or pieces originally, but then I found out they weren't made by a soldier. So at Appomattox, there was a gentleman who learned about the events there and was kind of like, wow, I wish I had been there. He was a native of New York, I believe, New York State. And he wrote letters to the citizens of Appomattox to learn about the way that the town is organized, where the buildings, certain buildings are, how they looked, what colors they were, where certain geological features were, trees, rocks, whatever, fences, roads. And he handmade the entire town out of cigar box pieces, and even lead cast little soldiers to go along with it, and literally made an entire reproduction model of the village just for the sake of picturing the surrender events as they unfolded. And the park acquired that whole model set of the village, and they used to have it on display. I don't know why they don't have it on display. Now, when I worked there, I was told, I think by maybe another guide, or it was, just again, rumor of some kind, because it wasn't on display. And the museum techs are the ones who handle the catalog, the actual pieces. That it was from a soldier who was wounded and he didn't make it to the surrender. So he always wanted to know what it would look like. So he made it from writing letters, but it turned out it was from a civilian. So even, obviously, even a civilian can recognize the importance of what was happening or what had happened there. And even from that, got the inspiration to make their own sort of souvenirs, not from pieces that were there, but from what they had on hand. And again, back to Appomattox itself, Union soldiers would trade whatever they could to get Confederate currency from the surrendered Confederates, because, well, you're not going to need it. It's not worth anything. So I'm going to take it home and keep it for my own keepsake. But again, yeah, that apple tree stood and verbally stands as a great example of one, soldiers particularly recognizing the events they were a part of, and two, that they took everything so personal that they even, again, took the time to not only hack apart that poor tree, but then make their own, personal items out of it just to remember what they were a part of.
So what do you think? The Appomattox apple tree and George Washington's cherry tree, the most important trees in American history, maybe?
It's a good argument. Trees have a good mark on our history in some way or another. So yeah, the Appomattox apple tree. If people didn't know about it, I'm glad to educate on it. And it can stand as another reminder of just how personal, this war was, and the impact it left on the soldiers involved.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing those pieces and sharing those stories from Appomattox, especially, coming from you, having worked over there. It's very personal to you, and you definitely shared that with this audience. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, Paul. Anytime.
Appreciate it. Definitely going to have you back on. Thank you so much for coming on.
Anytime. Thank you.